everybody go? Is this some kind of joke? Hello?
Whose idea was it to bring 150 chimpanzees on board anyway?
System Shock 2, co-developed by Irrational Games and Looking Glass Studios, published by EA and released in 1999, is a game that begs the question: how much value does a realistic and believable space add to a game? This spiritual parent to BioShock offers one of the most believable spaces I've encountered in a video game. It was once said that video games could be judged by their bathrooms, and whether or not they even have them. But System Shock 2 goes the extra light year mile. There are dorms, mess halls, kitchens, medical areas, cargo bays, engine rooms, you name it. All of this in a gradually expanding semi-open world for you to explore. At times, it even feels like the game forgets it's even a video game at all, instead feeling like an explorable model replica of a real fake starship. Usually, I like to start off my reviews with a bit of preamble about my history with the game or how I've come to the decision to play it. But in the case of System Shock 2, all I have to say is that it's due to the prestige that the game holds within the medium. There were no family members who I'd watch play, or schoolyard discussions going on around me. I was just a bit too young. This is the oldest game that I've reviewed so far, predating Deus Ex by around a year or so. This in turn has revealed to me which year can officially be classified as quote-unquote being before my time. I believe that year is 1999. A game that wasn't before my time, though, was BioShock. As many would know, BioShock was a video game. A video game released in 2007. And that, my friends, that was my time. I recall getting the collector's edition with the Big Daddy figurine, calling up all the local video game stores days before release, constantly checking whether or not it had broken street date. I can't remember if it did or if it didn't, but what I do remember is that when I first put that game in the Xbox 360, I did not stop playing until I saw the credits. This isn't going to be a discussion on BioShock though, and I'll try my best to refrain from mentioning it too much, but who are we kidding? I'll probably end up just making Dark Souls comparisons all video anyway. Just know that if you have played and you enjoyed BioShock, that this is a game worth playing simply to see how good of a spiritual successor BioShock really was. The word streamlined has generally always been a dirty word when used in reference to video games, but I think BioShock was an example of streamlining done well. It took and improved upon many of the mechanics and themes that are found within System Shock 2, forging on to create its own legacy for the next generation of gamers. Without going back and replaying BioShock for this System Shock 2 review, I'm in the camp of having enjoyed BioShock more as a whole. Apples and oranges though, and most would agree that BioShock left behind a lot of the things that made System Shock 2 so special. One of those things specifically is the level design and how much effort was put in to make the Braun feel like a real space. I'm going to go out of my way to say it now as to not upset folks later, but I don't think this always works in the game's favour. What it does result in is a game that feels truly unique and special, but less concerned with what is and what isn't intuitive level design. This isn't an absolute condemnation though. The developers have simply made their design choices. For better or for worse, those decisions, among others, and not even mentioning Shodan, has cemented the game's place on every top 100 greatest games list from its release until the end of time. Another little bit of housekeeping before I get started for real though. I used a couple of community recommended mods for my playthrough, only affecting the graphics and using an unofficial patch. I will leave a guide to these mods in the description. This will skew my discussion on the game's presentation later, but following this guide was pretty simple, and I feel like it helped bridge the graphical gap, making the game easier to swallow. Anyway, without further ado... Hello everyone, my name is Stone Skeleton, and this is my review of System Shock 2. In System Shock 2, you play as a mostly anonymous soldier in this RPG FPS hybrid, where most of your adventure is confined to a single location, the Braun, an experimental, faster-than-light starship traveling on its maiden voyage. The game opens up with a tram ride, quite reminiscent of Half-Life. You are then whisked into a tutorial section explaining the basics of playing System Shock 2. You have basic controls, combat, technical skills, and psi powers, each with their own voiced instructor to show you the ropes. From here you will partake in what amounts to be a pretty cool character creator. You go through a text-based choose-your-own-adventure section, where you'll decide how your character spends his next few years in training. The choices you make here are going to determine which stats you are going to start off with. I wasn't coming at this from a role-playing angle, so I didn't actually pay too much mind to my stats or the character creation as a whole. I ended this section with a psi-focused character, which I was fine with. The premise of the game is that the Braun, the FTL ship I mentioned earlier, accompanied by an attached escort ship, the Rickenbacker, is to go on its maiden voyage and put this new technology to the test. This is a monumental event in human history, with the ship's engines able to manipulate the very reality around it to travel at faster than light speeds. During the voyage, a distress signal is sent from planet Tau Ceti 5. Upon arrival, the crew discovers alien eggs, yet another huge event as this is first contact. For reasons unknown to us now, they are ordered to bring the eggs onto the ship for them to be brought back to Earth. This is the end of our context, as we are awakened on an exploding starship. During the awakening, something in the process goes wrong and our memory chip has failed, effectively making our character a convenient amnesiac. We are then contacted by the Von Braun's chief scientist, Janice Polito, informing us the ship is losing pressure and we need to get the hell out of there. After doing so, Polito continues to guide you through the ship, giving you objectives and urging you to find her on deck 4.
Effects of surgery and will be unable to remember any of the events.
Alarm bells may be ringing for those of you who have played BioShock, but for those of you who are unaware of the twist of this game, the one on the box art of the game, you are still coming from a place of trusting. I don't know how it was back in 1999, but it is no secret that Shodan is going to be somewhere in the game. It wasn't a matter of if, but a matter of when and how. I'll continue on this story train a bit later, but for now I'd best start actually describing what you do in the game. Your two main modes of play here are combat and exploration. Combat in System Shock 2 is probably the low point of the game for me, so let's just start there. You have quite a few options when it comes to dispatching with enemies, and I imagine this can add quite a bit of replay value for those who enjoy the combat, but I never found it particularly fun. As I started off as a psi guy, this game's equivalent to magic/plasmids, the first third of the game my main weapons were my wrench and my psi freezy blast. Hitboxes are weird in this game, sometimes feeling too strict and other times feeling too lenient. As a melee character, this is compounded by the game's abundance of just tiny enemies. Worst defender being the little spider enemies you'll encounter. They hit like a truck and will also poison you. They suck. The monkey enemies aren't too bad unless you get them around a doorway, but the little leech enemies can just go to hell with the damn spiders. Like I said, my only ranged option I was spec'd for was my freezy blast. I didn't have the skill points to use anything else, which is as good as any segue to talk about the skill system. The game has a currency called cybernetic modules. They are awarded to you from Polito for completing story objectives and can be found all over the ship. This grants a tangible reward for exploration, which is a nice bonus for getting into all the nooks and crannies. With these modules, you can spend them on 4 main level up types: stats, tech, psi, and weapons. Stats is just your basic health, melee damage, psi points, that kind of jazz. Then you have tech, which is focused on stuff such as hacking, weapon customization, and maintenance. Psi is the different kinds of powers you are able to use. The weapon skills are simply what weapons you can use and how effective you are at using them. My idea going in was to play as a psi/melee character, but by the halfway point in the game, the only psi power I was really using was the level 2 healing spell. Although I wanted to continue down the side path, after the level 3 upgrades it got a bit too confusing and the upgrades too expensive. I felt I was still missing the basics, like being able to wield a pistol or even maintain one. So I decided to move on into a more gun-orientated playstyle. I imagine the Psi/Hacker path is better suited for a second playthrough and beyond, when you're more acquainted with the ins and outs of the game's systems. As I began to see more and more mechanical enemies, it felt more and more that the pure melee playstyle was becoming unsustainable for me to complete the game. Once defeated, mechanical enemies will explode and take a bunch of your health with them if you are too close. So while they were still quite easy to defeat with the wrench or crystal shard, if I didn't use my grenade launcher, I'd be paying with a different resource to recover my lost health from the explosions. It's funny because the more I think about the different enemies in the game, I eventually just think that each one is worse than the next. None of them are particularly fun to fight, and the game doesn't escalate its challenge in an interesting way. Most of my fights past the beginning third of the game were won by taking a corner and peeking from a place the enemy couldn't hit me. Also, fuck the eggs. The enemies I did enjoy killing though were the hybrids, the cyborg midwives, and the monkeys. I love the monkeys. Both hybrids and cyborg midwives will talk to you in creepy, multi-layered voices, showcasing the inner turmoil going on inside them. Hybrids will constantly apologize and tell you to run, all the while chasing you through the halls. The cyborg midwives, on the other hand, are aware of their purpose within the many's design. They take care of the young and will furiously defend them with their spooky green laser beams. The monkeys, well, I just think they're neat. Their stock monkey sounds and funny hats would always amuse me to no end as I wandered the halls. Something else that hurts both the combat and the exploration is the inventory management. In System Shock 2, there is a grid-based inventory system with limited slots which can be upgraded using cybernetic modules. Obviously, this being an older game, there is no inventory sort feature, which means you oftentimes find yourself with multiple stacks of the same item taking up multiple slots. Making matters worse is the weapon maintenance and research mechanics. Weapons are quite brittle and have a durability rating out of 10, 10 being the weapon as most maintained and 0 meaning it's jammed and cannot be used. Repairing them requires you to use a consumable, its effectiveness determined by your maintenance skill. Working hand in hand with the inventory mechanics to piss me off, this can severely limit your weapon options and often mean dropping weapons to make space and then having to backtrack to pick them up later when you have the appropriate repair materials. Researching items requires you to have on your person the required research chemicals. The idea here is you choose a research on an item and it'll progress in the background as you explore on a timer, eventually asking you to insert X, Y, or Z research chems. These chemicals are found in storerooms, I believe one on each deck and all containing a chemical or two unique to that storeroom. This becomes a tedious exercise in backtracking as you run over all the decks trying to find the chemical that you need. At some point, I realized it was probably easier to just take everything from the storeroom and place the chems in an area close to the central elevator for easy access. While it's neat in theory and I appreciate the idea of it, there was a point where I just stopped researching altogether. Researching can be extremely useful, resulting in damage bonuses against enemies, additional weapons and armors to use, new consumables, cybernetic upgrades. Except for one junction though, it is never really necessary to ever research anything, but it's a cool idea that just doesn't play out well. What the research system showed me though was that if my two options for acquiring research materials were either placing them all in a large unorganized pile, or backtracking and hoping the chem I needed was in the room I was checking. What the hell was the point of this inventory system anyway? It really just felt like needless busy work. As you can go back to almost any part of the ship at almost any time, it never created any interesting decisions of what I should and shouldn't be holding on to. A certain kind of player would probably be constantly going to and from their chosen storeroom like a dumper truck. I felt the desire too, as the game really isn't clear on what you need and when you'll be the right time to use it, but frankly I was hoping the game would end before any of these decisions came to a head. I'm not trying to say there should be an unlimited inventory, but the game fundamentally just doesn't feel as enjoyable when your inventory can be constantly clogged by trash items that may or may not be important, requiring large amounts of game time to sort through. The exploration aspects of System Shock 2, though, are the real hit. The Braun itself has 6 decks, all serving a specific purpose. You'll start out with only access to one, but as you progress through the game, more will open up to you, while still allowing you to backtrack around the ship if required. To be honest with you, there was only one standout deck to me, that being the Recreation deck. System Shock 2 runs into an issue of just being too dry and clinical with its level design. The game just doesn't have the graphical fidelity to get away with countless grey holes. You do have access to a map and a mini-map to help you navigate the space, with even a way to drop down manual nav markers, which you can label yourself for reference points of places you've been or need to come back to. Compared to most games, the map is really helpful here, but as in how far useful it is in the context of this level, doesn't end up being that useful. I cannot overstate how labyrinthian the map can feel at times. But as much shit as I've just talked about it as a whole, the Braun offers a game world like no other. Exploration is rewarded in many ways. There are audio logs that will flesh out the story of an area you're in, cybernetic modules that can be collected to make yourself stronger, and of course you will find supplies that you'll sorely need. The game makes me feel like I'm alone in a shopping mall after hours, and it makes me feel like I'm not supposed to be there. Although that may just be the enemies constantly barking, "You are not supposed to be here." It's something that really needs to be played to be understood, as I fear my skills of articulation are not enough to do the game justice. Some will really enjoy the level design, while others will find it tedious, containing too many elements of backtracking. I'm in the latter camp. I just straight up found the design of the game unintuitive, and that can really kill the pacing. Things that should only take moments could end up taking serious time, and in this time a resentment within me built. I don't think I'm a shitty navigator, nor do I think that this is bad level design, but maybe this was just designed for a different type of person who is more into map making than I am. It feels liberating to run around a space where you could tell its design was not particularly concerned with trying to funnel the player. But unless you make the right logic leaps on where to go, have a guide handy, or just get lucky in your choice of direction, you too will probably harbour the same kind of resentment I do towards some of the more egregious Harrys in the game. This would all probably be a lot more tolerable if the game didn't feature respawning enemies. System Shock 2 is a game that utilises monster closets, points on the map where enemies will spawn, normally on a timer or if the player hasn't been to that location in a while. This means no leisurely exploring the ship or taking the time to get your bearings. No, you will always be in a rush. This may be the developer intent, but it doesn't work in the game's favour, instead forcing you to rush around frantically searching while you zoom past grey, anonymous hallways, trying to figure out where the hell to go. This can even interfere with your ability to listen to audio logs, as the children of the many will constantly speak dialogue at you while they fight, turning all sound into a garbled mess.
He should know the code to the maintenance access shaft. Hurry! He's been badly wounded. Don't let him die before he tells you that number.
Please. Transmitting cybernetic modules. Do not
Security alert terminated.
I'm not sure where to put this, and for those who have played it before, it's probably preaching to the choir. But I wouldn't feel like I've done my due diligence if I didn't say it. But the hacking minigame sucks. It didn't need to be a minigame, and could have easily just been like a pass-fail system. It's almost hard to describe. That's how bad it is. Basically, you go up to something that needs hacking, and a little interface will appear with nodes for you to click on. Based on your skills, you'll have a different percentage chance to unlock a node, and you'll need 3 nodes in a row. Also based on your skills is the amount of danger nodes, which will have a far higher chance of sounding alarms. To successfully hack something, you basically just need to keep reloading your save over and over until you hack whatever you're trying to hack, or just say fuck it and give up on hacking altogether. Towards the end of the game, when I've had spare modules to burn, I'd placed more points into hacking, but goddamn, for a game series where there is a protagonist called the Hacker, you'd think they'd come up with something a little more imaginative. On the tangent of the hacking system is also how the game handles security cameras and alarms. Long story short, get seen by a camera, an alarm goes off, and enemies will endlessly spawn until you find a security terminal and disable the alarm. Pretty okay systems, I guess, except for the fact that if you can't find a terminal or had the misfortune of blowing it up on a failed hacking attempt, you're SOL. If you can't find a way to disable it, then you're basically put into gamer timeout until the alarm expires. This is by far the worst way to punish a player for a mistake. I didn't run into this issue a lot, but it is yet another weird design choice that doesn't add fun or challenge to the gameplay, which means it could have been removed altogether and not had anything of value lost. For another weird decision in this game's inclusion is the medical revive stations. Basically those Vita tanks that were in Bioshock. When you die, you will be revived at these 3D print reviver station whatevers for the fee of 10 nanites. You could look at these as a form of checkpoints, but they are oddly placed on the decks, sometimes not even being found until the end of the level. In a game where quick saving is so simple, I don't really see the point of these, as by the time you find one, you are probably almost over with the deck you're on. The value I can see in them is insurance if you forgot to save in the past 5 minutes or so, but I'd recommend to anyone playing this game to just live on that quick save button. System Shock 2 is packed to the brim with mechanics and nuance, but to be honest I don't know when, if ever, I'll replay the game. Gameplay wise, I never just had that much fun or felt fairly challenged. I also never really felt like I could outthink the game the way you could in Deus Ex or Prey. I've been told that the real fun to be had here is by stacking psi buffs and breaking the game in that way, but I've never really found stacking buffs to be the fun presentation wise, and I found the game to be mostly okay with the mods I used. With these mods, only the most particular of graphics hounds should have a problem getting through it. I love the design of some of the enemies, and obviously Shodan and Xerxes deserve some credit for their designs too. The ship isn't a marvel of fidelity or art, but is functional, and a lack of artistic pizzazz adds to the feeling of it being a real place in comparison to Bioshock's Rapture, which did feel like a fictional location. Voice acting and music in the game are pretty good too. The weirdly fitting Euro EDM soundtrack sounds great, and the voice acting is all around pretty believable. The game fosters a great atmosphere with its sound effects, dread being a commonly felt emotion throughout the game. What really kills the audio, though, is the number of overlapping sounds going on with seemingly no way to distinguish distance. You'll often have an audio log playing, then a monster will come kicking up the soundtrack, then Shodan on the other line telling you yet again that she's awarding you more cybernetic modules for your good work.
Please. Transmitting cybernetic modules.
With all the overlapping dialogue, you'd hope there'd be some kind of subtitles to help you keep track of the important things being said, but not here. I feel like I could very well have missed out on some pretty significant audio logs, which I'm going to blame on the level design. There's just no proper way to listen to them except for standing still. But even then, the game is still running, so you're at risk of monsters spawning and interrupting your listening session. When you think about it, we're still having the problem with this game as today, but a game that did work this out was Bioshock, so at least old Levine learned something over the years. We're now at the part of the review where I'm going to say, to the best of my ability, recall the story of System Shock 2. So if you're interested about spoilers, if you don't want spoilers, you'd best skip ahead to the marker I'm going to set. That said, I'm only going to be giving an overview and not the beat by beat. There is only one grand twist in System Shock 2, and it's revealed on the box art. The real meat here is found in the environmental storytelling and the audio logs. So as I said, your character awakens on a ship, which is not in a good shape. A voice over the radio tells you that the pressure is going wild and you need to get off. Once you're off, a character named Polito begins giving you basic tasks to complete around the ship. I believe you are doing this under the guise of restoring power to something or other and taking an escape pod out of there. While bopping around fixing shit, you begin to come across these deformed humanoids that have giant worms on the top of their heads. In space, this is normal, and I was trained for it, so I whacked them with my wrench. After you whack a few, though, you notice that they're crying out in pain and seemingly are not happy with their current situation. It then dawns upon thee that these aren't just regular space monsters. These are crew members of this ship, infected with some sort of parasite. Well, you continue on your wrench-whacking way, restoring more of the ship's systems, all the while this Polito character barking orders at me as if she couldn't get off her ass and help this here process go a wee bit smoother. On your way to restarting your 7th reactor, things start to really heat up. You are teleported, either physically or mentally, to this fleshy womb area, with a voice telling you that it wants you to join it. Ignore the mother and become one with the flesh.
Do you not trust the feelings of the flesh? Our biology yearns to join with yours.
We welcome you to our mass.
But you puzzle us. Why do you serve our mother?
How can you choose cold metal over the splendor of flesh? But you fear us,
We hear your thoughts, and they rage for your brothers you believe dead.
but they are not.
They sing in our symphony of life. We offer another chance to join us.
This is genuinely creepy and really helps set up the many as this horrific antagonist. I probably should have mentioned 4,000 words ago, but System Shock 2 can and should be classified as a horror game. The ship's onboard computer, Xerxes, is becoming upset with your insistence of fixing things and continues to throw waves of enemies at you while you explore. I took him down a notch though. I broke one of his security cameras, that rat bastard. After fixing more things, it is finally time to meet Polito on Deck 4. It is then revealed in one of the coolest bad guy reveals ever, that Polito was Shodan the whole time. Okay, I've talked about how this reveal is a non-reveal and most people were expecting as much. But goddamn, this is still a pretty cool scene. The devs knew that this wasn't really a twist or reveal and tailored the scene to make you know that they knew it. I had been playing the whole time waiting for a cheesy reveal, and what I got was one of the best scenes in video games. I never played the first game, but was aware of Shodan, being the antagonist of that game too. Should have probably been dealt with there, so what happened? Well, it seems that the Many is one of Shodan's experiments, and when the protagonist from the first game dealt with her, the place where her consciousness resided crash-landed on a planet never to be seen again. Well, while she was asleep, her children thrived and multiplied, eventually developing an agenda of their own, albeit stolen from their mother. They want to ride the ship back to Earth and gobble them all into fleshy goop. They sent the distress signal that the Von Braun went to investigate, and due to ego flares on board the ship, 2 members foolishly went out with the proper worm infection protection. The crew was ordered to bring the eggs aboard and turn back to head for Earth. Over the course of some period of time that I can't quite recall, the Many takes over the ship by infecting the crew on board. Stoked with its plan, the Many sets course for Earth, and all in all was pretty pleased with itself. The thing they weren't counting on though was Shodan finding a way onto the ship too. She's on board and she's pissed. From what I understand, she gets to you before the Many can, infecting you not with worms but with the same cybernetic enhancements you've been gleefully installing this whole time. Well, like it or not, you're on Team Shodan. I have to give credit to the writers here. This is pretty cool. You're sandwiched between 2 antagonists and must help the greater of 2 evils eliminate the lesser, the Manys. After this point, the overall plot doesn't really develop in any meaningful way. The environmental storytelling goes on, and the quality stays high, but you are going back into the mode of running around fixing shit while Shodan doms you around the joint. You'll fight new, even more annoying enemies and explore more extremely obtuse and frustrating places, eventually getting you off the ship and into a contender for the worst video game levels of all time, the Many itself. At this point, I was just so annoyed with the game, and it's clear the devs didn't put their heart into this section, most likely because they just wanted it to be over and probably didn't expect you to make it this far in. After you dispose of the Many, Shodan partakes in some of her signature gloating, her true plan being finally revealed. With her own vast power included, she intends to use the faster-than-light engines on the Braun to manipulate the very reality around her, transcending from AI to true godhood as she has been destined. Well, her plan doesn't last very long, because we follow her into cyberspace, you see, and promptly proceed to whack her with our wrench. Clearly defeated, she does what she does best and gloats some more before biting the big one. Overall, the story was okay, and Shodan was fantastic as an antagonist. It was a good wrap to the kind of game that they were making, and the giant levels left plenty of room to pack in environmental storytelling. This is probably far more that could be said about System Shock 2's mechanics, gameplay, and story, but I've tried to include what made the most impact on me. This wasn't my favourite game to play, though now I have context on why it was so influential. I think that if you have any interest in the game, that is enough to recommend it to you. I don't feel worse having played it, and even at its worst, I feel that I learned a lot of lessons about what is and what isn't successful game design. System Shock 2 would probably have been a revelation in its time, and while it doesn't feel as revelatory today, it was still a pretty fun romp that you can smash in like 30 hours or so. So, yeah, thank you all for watching, and have a